NetSparker, the developers of desktop and cloud-based web application security scanners that enable you to automatically identify vulnerabilities in your web applications and web services. NetSparker scanners employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities with their proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at netsparker.com or email at contact@netsparker.com. Recorded Future. They help security teams make more confident decisions faster. Recorded Future's technology automates broad collection and analysis of cyber threat data and delivers the rich external context you need to understand alerts and emerging threats. With real-time threat intelligence from Recorded Future, security teams respond to threats 63% faster and find undetected threats 10 times quicker. To get started, go to recordedfuture.com/securityweekly and sign up for the Recorded Future Cyber Daily. Every day, you'll receive an email with the top results for trending technical indicators, cyber news, exploited vulnerabilities, suspicious IP addresses, and more. Subscribe today and stay ahead of cyber attacks. Endgame's converged endpoint security platform is transforming security programs, their people, processes, and technology with the most powerful endpoint protection and simplest user experience, ensuring analysts of any skill level can stop targeted attacks before information theft. Endgame unifies prevention, detection, and threat hunting to stop known and unknown attacker behaviors at scale with a single agent. For more information, visit endgame.com. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. This is the security news. But first, a quick announcement. We are running 2 surveys. You can go to our website, securityweekly.com, click on the surveys menu link even. It's not a link, it's a menu. And in the menu, there's 2 links. One to the 5 stages of automation maturity, quick survey for you to fill out, and then a subsequent webcast in November to discuss the results of your security automation maturity. The other is our 2019 listener survey, which we like to anonymously collect data about our audience, which greatly helps us in 2 ways. Helps us stay in business, to report to potential sponsors, who's tuning into the show. And we ask questions about what content you want to hear on the show so that we can produce content that you actually want to hear, which is usually just a bunch of us having drinks and talking about security sometimes, and other times not so much security. Yep. But in any case, that's what we're going to do on this segment. Dan is still here with us. Joff is still here with us. Lee had to drop off. So let's dig into it. Have you guys seen the Pseudo flaw?
Yes.
What? No way. A Pseudo flaw?
A Pseudo flaw. It happens.
No.
It's not the first time it's happened either.
That's a bummer.
This one is actually kind of fun though.
Well, I thought it was interesting if you specify your user as 429.496.7295, those will note that it is the unsigned equivalent of -1,
Yep.
which is 0, which is always the user root account.
It's an integer overflow or underflow.
Underflow.
Yep.
Yes.
Also, depending on the version, you can also just specify as -1.
Yep.
And it will also underflow.
Now, do you have to specify the commands that the user can run in order for this to be effective, or can it also? Well, I guess if you had all, it wouldn't matter because sudo would give you root access.
Sudo minus S.
So it's only when you're trying to limit to a command they can run those commands as root. The example shows it not being run as root.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gotcha.
But of course, if you can spawn a shell, then also, if bin bash is one of the ones that you can spawn.
Correct.
As
so you can put the hash in front of the number is the word, right?
Yep.
And then you can supposedly execute a command, and I'm doing it right now. I'm trying to see if I can
see if you can make it hack your own box.
Yeah, for Joff, for the record, the current Slingshot release from Sans actually is vulnerable to this.
Oh, sweet.
Right.
So sweet.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's actually I was seeing the discussion on this.
It's not really, but you give the users the root password.
We give the users the root password, and it gives them full super user sudo rights. So it's not like it's a big deal. They have all of that same access anyways. But it also makes for a great effective demonstration currently. So
yeah, it's kind of fun.
Absolutely.
Yep. I did add some stories to the show notes if you haven't already refreshed. So.
I will refresh. Any other stories piquing your interest?
One that I had that was actually I thought was on the fun side was my story number 4. Father of Unix Ken Thompson's 8-character password has finally been cracked.
Oh, I saw that story. I meant to add that one too. I'm glad you added that one. I thought that was a great read.
We're in sync right there. That was scary.
Yep.
We both were like, I saw that story.
Right? It was exciting. It was an exciting read for me.
Yeah.
But one of the other ones they weren't able to crack yet. When I read the article.
What's that?
One of the other founders, Carnegie or Ritchie, one of the other original C people, I thought also was involved with the original versions of Unix. In the article that I read, said it couldn't crack one of their passwords, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Interesting. So the way this one turned about is that there was an Etsy password file amongst a file dump from the BSD3 source.
Which back then, for those youngins listening, there was no shadow file.
There was no Etsy shadow. That's right. Everything was in Etsy password, man.
Right.
Yep. So this was discovered back in 2014, and they've been apparently working on the problem since then, or hadn't really taken a good look at it. But Leah Newkirken, I'm butchering that name, decided to fire the DES-based crypt3 hash through a bunch of stuff and was able to recover the password, which was actually quite good.
It's pretty awesome.
Good job, Ken. Good job. Yeah. It looks like a good password. I think.
So an 8-character password on an AMD Radeon RX Vega 64 with Hashcat at about 930 megahashes per second took 4 days.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Significant amount of time.
Yep. And the article was ironic in that they said that father of Unix Ken Thompson checkmated 8-character password finally cracked, and the password was notation for a chess move.
Interesting. I thought it was a fun little article.
Yep, I did too.
What is this with cyber insurance? Baltimore wants to buy $20 million in cyber insurance.
So
is that so many?
There was another one too that I saw maybe 2 weeks ago about AIG, I think it was, that was being sued because they refused to cover losses due to a cyber incident, and that the company had purchased cyber insurance, and they got hacked. They had a ton of money siphoned out from their bank account due to phishing. They lost millions of dollars, and they went and filed a claim against their cyber insurance, and AIG says, no.
Is that a new style phishing attack? A doo-doo phishing attack?
Doo-doo, yeah. We mail doo-doos. So they filed a claim against their cyber insurance with AIG, and AIG says, no, we're not paying it. So they sued, and AIG says, the cyber insurance doesn't cover illegal acts.
So
what does it cover? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
an insider potentially
that would technically be an illegal act if they were.
What if it was an accident? I don't know.
Well, so that's what it's intended to cover, stuff like accidents.
Yeah.
I
accidentally dropped the database and we didn't have a backup.
Bingo.
Yeah.
I accidentally set fire to all my, fire insurance might cover that, but then all your cyber losses as well. I accidentally deleted the file server.
Yep. All things most of us have done in our career.
Yeah.
In the past.
Now, on the other hand, cyber terrorism insurance.
Interesting.
Mr. Poor brought that one up when we were talking about that the other day.
Yeah.
Like, how is that different than? How is cyber terrorism insurance different than cyber insurance? I don't know. For me, I think Baltimore may be going about this the wrong way based on this AIG thing, in that they want to buy cyber insurance to protect themselves when they get hacked. And, that's not what cyber insurance is for.
To pay the ransom, I think this is setting a bad precedent.
Yep. Well, I think it's a mistake in that that's not what the insurance does. They don't help you recover your money or recover when you get hacked because it doesn't cover illegal acts. It covers other types of cyber losses. So, and I think that's why Baltimore was doing it, because they got hacked. They got nailed with ransomware.
Yeah, ransomware. And I don't know which strain it was, but ransomware.
And I think that's what they're trying to protect themselves against. I think they're spending the money.
It's interesting. Our next segment's pre-recorded, and in it, I asked Peter, that he's describing how basically it's an organized, it's an organization basically with a structure, different groups that have different relationships, like partnerships that represent the criminal cyber underground, for lack of a better term, right? Cyber criminal, I don't know, evil attack, or however you want to phrase it, right? And it's very organized. And as he was talking, I'm like, so what he was leading into was attackers may target, let's just use the city of Baltimore as an example, right? Maybe they're not targeting. Maybe someone just compromised the city of Baltimore, right? And then goes, hey, I've got this, for sale. I got a, backdoor Trojan, an implant on a system here. They sell that to someone else. That someone else goes and maintains that connection, moves laterally, grabs a whole bunch of stuff, intellectual property, records, anything, information of valuable based on that. After some time, attackers can live in various networks, especially those that aren't putting the budget and resources and time and culture into security. Universities and municipalities, I think, fall into that category. Not 100%, obviously, but we've worked in education, right? We've worked with municipalities, so it's conceivable. Let's say they're in for a year, they collect everything, then they take that access and they're like, now what do we do? Oh, we can sell this access again. Like, we've already taken everything, so let's sell it again. And they sell it again to another group that's like, well, there's nothing left to really pillage here, so we'll monetize it by doing ransomware.
Right. Yep.
And they're just doing ransomware, right? or I think in some of the, and Peter weighs in on this, but this is my opinion, I think if they're not going to sell it, right, they're going to ransomware and like just for the lols and not really care about the payout. Like, we're burning it anyway.
Yep.
Maybe they thought they were, could have been caught, or they were just done with it. I don't know. I don't know that you'd necessarily burn your stuff.
Yep. I've got everything of value, or I've got everything out of perceived value. Why don't I go for it all? And if I burn it and it no longer comes back, no big loss.
Right. I'm done. I'm on to the next thing. Right.
Yep. Exactly. So
maybe they shopped it around and they couldn't sell it to someone else, so they're like, oh, let's just have fun at this point, which is awful, by the way.
Yeah.
But
so
especially preying on universities and municipalities in our example is just
I think so. Thinking about that, I think, how much did Baltimore say they were going to try to spend? Was it $20 million?
Yeah, and I think Baltimore was the. Or maybe they weren't. In May, they demanded $76,000 in ransom, and the city refused to pay it and spent $18 million in recovery. There were other cases where the ransomware folks demanded $1 million, and I think it was a city in Texas, maybe. I could be wrong about that, but anyway, somewhere in the U.S., right? And then they went to their cyber insurance company, and their cyber insurance said, "Yeah, we'll write you a check for $200,000." So they went back to the ransomware folks, and they're like, "All right, how about $200,000?" And they were like, "No." Which I don't understand. So they were just doing it for the lulz. Yep. Is taking that $200,000 maybe going to put them in a position where they could be discovered, as it gained a lot of popularity in popular press, right? Covering here in the show, there was articles written about it. Yep. So maybe after it blew up, they were like, yeah, it doesn't matter like what they do, like they're walking away from it, kind of thing. Or they're just really stupid and not taking $200,000, but who knows? I think
there's so many things wrong on both sides of this equation. Is that, like, one, Baltimore got, say, if those figures are correct, they got hit for $77,000 and then spent $18 million recovering. Mm-hmm. That calculus doesn't work.
Well, is it $18 million they wanted to spend anyway to be resilient to future attacks? $76,000 this time, but if I do nothing...
That said, you said it took them $18 million to recover, not to fortify their defenses.
Recovery, you're correct.
So, correct. And now they want to spend another $20 million on top of that on insurance. If they had spent $77,000, they would have had $38 million to spend on infrastructure, people, development of programs, consultants to build programs.
Well, I think the hard part for all organizations and municipalities is people are not just expensive that year. People are reoccurring fixed costs.
Right. Well, so is cyber insurance.
That's
Because you got to
true.
pay for it every year.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
I mean, you had $18 million in money you could have spent that 1 year on capital costs, and then potentially $20 million on operational costs for many years to staff those people. Same with your insurance. I mean, this doesn't sound...
I also feel like it's easy to say that you should just have good backups, but
yeah.
good
Good backups and a process to be able to determine root cause so that when you restore from backups, you can fix it so it doesn't happen again.
I'm a little out of touch with the backup side of IT in a larger setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a larger enterprise. Are they really like that resilient? It depends on how it's set up, right? In other words, if I ransomware something, I get access to the backups and I wipe the backups too. Like how feasible and how expensive is that to protect your backups?
But again, in enterprise, there's a point where you're storing those backups offsite or you're storing them in some sort of offline media.
Right.
They may be 6 months old.
Yeah.
But what's the cost of recreating 6 months worth of data?
A lot less than all of it, which some organizations have just flat out folded.
Yeah.
A medical office, I think, in California just decided to close up shop. Now, there could have been other contributing factors,
sure.
But
so there's lots of calculus to consider, and to me, this Baltimore calculus thing seems way off. And I'd also argue on the converse, I need $1 million to give you the keys to unlock your ransomware. Will you take 200,000? What?
Yeah, what? Right.
I didn't spend $1 million to compromise your network. I didn't likely spend $200,000 to compromise your network. It was probably an afternoon and a couple of ho-hos and a beer. So yeah, sure, I'll take 200 grand.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Is it not worth getting caught potentially for? I don't know. I guess anonymous payments are certainly a thing.
Now, so is it worth getting caught for $1 million? You're still getting caught either way.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. Joff, do you have any thoughts on this one?
I don't know. I was researching a time machine problem.
Uh-oh. Speaking of backups.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. I just had the fortune of upgrading to Mac OS Catalina. And
oh, God.
It's been interesting.
What did you do that for?
I had a weak moment.
We should know better at our age, right?
I clicked, why, yes, I do want to upgrade.
No!
2 hours later, I'm like, why the fuck did I do that?
So, I guess getting back to ransomware for a moment, we all remember the physical tape media that was stored off-site. That could very well continue or even start growing as a service. Iron Mountain, right? We've talked about before.
And even Iron Mountain moved into sort of the next that you could literally ship them your data. Right. Not ship them, you could internet transfer them their data, and they would hold it on their own.
Yeah, they would have to make a business move like that, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
In any case.
Terrifying.
Yeah, life in the big city.
You got other stories? Oh, I like this one. The D-Link routers that are vulnerable to an unauthenticated remote command injection, if I'm not mistaken, vulnerability.
Yeah. Was this one of your stories, Paul, or is this mine?
This was one of yours.
Okay.
I think I might have covered it on Hack Naked, maybe even this week. But I thought it was that's a really bad. That's shit we were finding back when we wrote the book, right?
Yeah.
That was 2007, 2006. We were doing the research. Those attacks were already very well documented on home router firmware. And here we are years later. Not only is it still present, but the manufacturers are still saying we're not going to fix it because these are end of life.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's a forward revenue thinking model. That's what it is. Oh boy. What are you gonna do?
If you care about security, you're not going to go buy another D-Link. But I think in this case, the consumer is not weighing that into their equation as to which router they're going to buy.
Yep. Nope. And yeah, that said, it's end of life. But how many pieces of end of life stuff do you still have running in your network that does something?
A lot.
Yeah.
Well,
hey, I like the Kubernetes story. Talk about topical, right? You got to think today's cloud environments. The control plane is completely software, and Kubernetes is a big part of that from the orchestration perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, any bug that says Kubernetes and potentially denial of service or exploitation of the control plane gains my interest.
Yep. This is Paul's story number 9, correct?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I haven't looked into all the details, but it seems like pretty much a replay attack. Like basically, it looks like you're including a username in your HTTP headers, and if that user is already authenticated, you can authenticate as that user.
No!
Did I read that right?
That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just reading. So
yeah,
I think you did read that right.
That's just dangerous because Kubernetes, like Job was saying, is essentially the software backplane, the orchestrator for all of your containers, right? And so one exploit could potentially get me into thousands of containers.
Yeah, just think a threat model where the attacker is essentially the conductor.
Right?
That's exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I will just install this package on every single container and slowly rebuild them, and then my malware is in every single container.
I was going to say it's like instant botnet. Hey, sweet,
right?
Instant botnet,
and potentially pretty stealthy as well. If you can get into the supply chain essentially of the containers and control the checking of it, right? You could go undetected for some time potentially. I mean, everyone's configuration is totally different. I don't have a ton of experience with Kubernetes yet, but
I don't think anybody does.
Right? I don't think I'm alone either. It's on my list. I mean, I've got when I hire a developer, it certainly moves up higher on my list to install and configure that stuff.
Yeah. So
and what's interesting also, by the way, with Kubernetes is it's one of those things, right? You can run locally, you can run in the cloud, or you can use a service in the cloud that's using Kubernetes under the covers. That would be a big find for an attacker.
Yep. Looking at the diagram they've got in this threat post article that you were referring to, Paul, for this one. It looks like just changing the header, the X remote user, and setting that to the authenticating proxy, and automatically passes it on to the backend. I was reading some stuff today from the Portswigger folks on HTTP request smuggling.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've heard of that attack before.
And that seems very similar to the types of things that you do here. By combining content length and transfer encoding and the number of chunks, and the front end parses it one way, and then the back end parses something else potentially. So you can send HTTP requests differently, and one set of the proxy or the CDN or something of the like parses it differently. So you can get a request to the proxy. The proxy goes, "Oh yeah, cool. This is this." When it's received on the back end, it's processed differently.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's sort of what it reminds me of, because it's using those X header options.
Right. Which are vast in number.
Yes.
Super picky as well. As Dan, you probably know if you worked with APIs, right? Yeah. Sometimes one little space in one field in the header can be the difference between working and not working.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And it's nerve-wracking with all the different headers that exist. What are the servers? How every web server may parse those differently, or every link in the chain, whether you're through a CDN or some other kind of reverse proxy, they can cause problems.
Yeah, which it tells me that there's potential security issues, Larry, like you described. Whenever something is that picky about the headers, it's parsing it is dicey on the back end, and anytime you run into that situation, that's usually a security vulnerability in the making. Do you have any older Echo devices on your network?
Define older.
Generation 1 Amazon Echo dots? Is that?
How do I determine which generation they are?
Well, it's like your iPhone. You just look at your iPhone and you know what model you have, right? No? Okay.
When Paul said that, all I could think of was the Echo service in the Unix kernel.
Echo and charge
different Echo.
Echo charge in.
Yeah. No, I don't have any older Echo devices.
First generation Echoes and 8th generation Kindles.
Yeah, why pray tell do you ask?
They are vulnerable to the crack or key reinstallation attack, which Larry could probably tell us all about and start reciting from Sans courseware verbatim.
So Sans courseware that I wrote.
No way.
Yeah, way. Looks like I've hit my article limit, so I can't read that one for dark reading. Damn it, because I'm coming from your IPs. Damn it.
I know.
Okay, so they're the 8th generation Kindles and the 1st generation Echoes are subject to key reinstallation attacks. That's kind of interesting.
Is that specific to the hardware chipset or the driver or firmware?
Software. So drivers.
So they could update it unless there's something in hardware that prevents them from putting the fix on it, or
there shouldn't be anything that prevents them from pushing a fix because
if the hardware supports WPA2, right? It'll support the fix for the.
It's all about how they deal with four-way handshakes and when they choose to reinstall keys that have already been pre-calculated in that four-way handshake.
And not earth-shattering.
No,
it's stretch.
It is completely software-based. So they should be able to update that. Now there may be some concern about bricking those devices during those updates because you know how that goes.
Oh, I do.
So, but yeah, there's some. It's absolutely software based. They should be able to update that. But that's kind of interesting. So of course now I'm going to go look and see because I think I have 1st generation Echo Dots because I think I ordered them right when they came out.
Joff, are you running AeroNet access points at your house?
I am not. Well, it depends. I have to think about that. These are the Cisco 1140s that the APs, but they were based on AeroNet originally. I know that, but the code on these is probably later. I'm looking up because there's an AP above my head.
There's a vulnerability, insufficient memory code for certain URLs on impacted AeroNet devices. Requesting specific URLs from the affected AP using the web configuration management system. And I will say largely when we deployed AeroNet back in the day, Joff, we disabled the web we even back then had config management. I don't need a web server, web management on all my access points. All that was going to lead to, in my case at university, right, was students getting curious and accessing the web interface and finding vulnerabilities. So we would just do config management and disable it because you didn't need it if you had the control plane. Why do you need the web? You got to have a command line. That's what we used.
Actually, now you remind me. I mean, there's 2 images on Cisco APs. One was a heavyweight image that it makes the AP autonomous. The other one was the lightweight image that actually makes the AP talk to the controller and makes the AP into a kind of a dumb device. Most people are in the latter category where the AP doesn't have any intelligence. It's just sending its CapWap traffic back to the controller. And that's the model.
CapWap and everything.
Yeah, that's the model I'm using here in the house. It's the old CapWap.
What do you have? You have 1100s?
Yeah, 1140s.
These are 1540, 1560, 1800, 2800, 3000, 4000. Models.
My access points are old. They are eBay specials where people were selling them and going, I don't know what it does, because they were all in CapWap mode, and people were like, it doesn't work. I'm like,
right?
No, I know what to do with this. Bargain.
And I bet you they still work great today.
Oh, my God, yeah, the wireless network. I mean, God, I had, my kids are older now, but while the last one was still in high school, I mean, we were just like a hub, man. They would cluster like, your wireless network rocks. Right?
Yeah.
And the kids would
and is that, those are just BG, right? Are those even N?
No, they're N as well.
They're N.
Yeah,
okay.
These guys are ABGN.
Yes, A was big back then.
Yeah, but the thing is, they got the intelligent handoff, right? So they manage the. I mean, there's 3 APs in the house, and they manage the handoff really well. So
that's what I found with the BG. I don't know if even they do N in my Ubiquity stuff. Like they far outperform all the off-the-shelf stuff that you would get.
Oh, by far. Oh
'Cause
my
the
God.
hardware
Yeah.
and software is just so much better.
Well, being able to do opportunistic key caching and key exchange between the APs so the handoff goes smoothly is a big deal, right? Because if you have to, and Larry knows this better than I do, but if you have to run the client through a full certificate exchange and the whole bit,
that takes time.
It takes time.
And then your porn stutters.
And you don't want your
Buffering.
You don't want your porn to stutter while you're walking
around the house.
I know.
I mean, wow, that got deep quickly.
That's what she
Anyway.
said. That's what she said.
I wonder how that compares to the mesh systems. It's not Arlo.
Do you remember, Larry, back in the day they were backhauling? When 5 gig first came out, the initial idea was we'll keep everybody from the user perspective on 2.4 gig, and we will backhaul and mesh the APs together so you don't have to run so much cabling.
Yep.
And we'll use 5 gig frequencies to do the backhauling.
So you use the A.
So you could have a separate.
band.
So you could have a separate radio that wouldn't be subject to having the bandwidth because you're using one radio to do both functions.
Yeah, it was kind of a bridge-to-bridge kind of idea to backhaul the traffic.
But I think that's how I can't remember the name of it, but Google has one too. Linksys has one where you get 3 access points and you don't have to run cables to them, and they mesh together, and they just have separate radios. That
the idea hasn't died. I mean, it's not a stupid idea to bridge traffic radio to radio between APs. I mean,
now, Joff, if you want to go, talk about Wi-Fi in the old school, do you remember when Wi-Fi 802.11 ran on 900 megahertz?
Yes.
Oh God.
Was that B? Was it the B?
It was
B protocol running on 900 megahertz.
I don't even remember that.
And there were thousands of dollars.
You're
Remember,
making me feel younger than you right now, Larry.
It may have been like early Shmoo Group members. There was like a small pocket of people that were doing the research on it, and there was no security.
Yep.
None.
That's interesting because I still have some of that gear. I have a 900 megahertz access point that runs 802.11.
And now it's coming back.
Yep. And some PCMCIA cards.
Was it the same, orthogonal frequency multiplexing stuff that was going on then? I
love it when you talk nerdy.
Direct sequence spread spectrum.
DSSS. Yep. Okay, yeah.
802.11 G moved into OFDM.
OFDM, that's right. So you're really just talking about the same protocol, just on
same protocol, different frequency, because that was what was available to them because 900 megahertz radios were cheap,
and
as opposed
could
to 2.4.
penetrate through lower frequency, penetrates through structure,
longer distance,
better for longer distance.
Yeah. That's the big problem with these higher frequency radios. They're terrible with penetrating structures.
Yep, distance
and people, which are just I remember learning that with Wi-Fi architecture, right? The more people you have in a university, right? Wi-Fi works great when we tested it. Fill the classroom up with students. Yep. And all of us are made mostly of water. And there goes your Wi-Fi signal.
That was one of the lessons that Josh learned when they were deploying wireless in Johnson & Wales Library.
Yes.
The library is that they put some high-powered antennas so that they could shoot stuff down long ranges of books. Because they had to go through the books. Because, believe it or not, books contain a significant amount of moisture.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
So they had to blast through all that water in the books, and then they redesigned
were nuking books.
They're drying out the books like in a microwave, and then they changed the way the shelves were lined in the library so that the antenna and the bookshelves were parallel, and they were just blasting out to the sidewalk.
So all the students were in the library in between all the books getting the best Wi-Fi signal ever.
Yes.
That was not the only reason they were in between the books.
Right? That's the sheets, Joff. That's the sheets. Yep.
Oh, you didn't have experiences between the... never mind.
Never mind.
Different show, Joff. Different show.
Hey, Paul, I'm going to have to jump off, but thanks again.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah. Have a good one, guys.
You too.
All right. Cheers.
One other story I thought was actually kind of fun was my story number number
my
7.
story with the toilets, but
well, you know what? Well, let's do your toilet first, and then we'll do my number 7.
Do your toilet.
Do your toilets. Which one is the toilet one?
Where's your toilet story?
There's it's
Using machine learning to clean your toilets?
No, a new survey on behalf of NCipher. They surveyed 1,800 IT security professionals in 14 countries about the increased use of IoT products in businesses. 68% are worried that hackers will simply alter the function of an IoT device, but also somewhere else in here, something about a toilet.
Well, you never want a premature flush. I mean, let's face it.
You want your flush to happen on time every time.
And, if you've got a software-controlled flusher, this could be a surprise to you.
Which story is this, Paul? Number 4.
So 21% are afraid that pranksters will hack their connected toilets. I do not have a connected toilet or a toilet seat. I have the bidet toilet seats, but there's no connectivity there.
Yep.
Just plumbing, like actual physical water plumbing.
There's 2 principles that I adhere to as a Luddite, and that is, there's no fucking way I am putting the locks of my house on the on the network. No way. Sorry. And I'm not putting my toilets on it either.
I know you're so opposed to the locks. I don't think that's so much of a big. Someone's just going to open the window, smash the window.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I was actually contemplating, Joff, recently. As I may have mentioned before, the home security system we had before, Iris, folded. Lowe's shut it down, so I needed a no home security system, and I'd done a bunch of research, and believe it or not, I went with SimpliSafe.
Yeah, I saw that at Best Buy. I haven't.
Yep, and the stuff showed up. I haven't installed the free camera I got yet, but this is not a product endorsement by any stretch of the imagination. This is just what I did, and I was up and running in 15 minutes. I don't have it doing monitoring currently, but the kids think it is. Mm-hmm. So they're trained to turn the alarm on and off, so that the police don't get called. Type of thing.
Training's important.
Yeah, exactly.
See, but so I control things like my lights, my garage door, my sprinkler system, my refrigerator. If you can get Samsung firmware to actually work, you could probably hack it, but it probably would crash in the process. What else do I have? I did the mini split heat pump in my house, and I have and there's 3 or 4 companies, right, that make these little devices. They're Wi-Fi and infrared, so you can control the head units in the room that are normally an infrared remote, because there's no actual thermostat like you get in a full HVAC system. So I've got those. Those are kind of wonky, but I do that for convenience. Where my greatest concern is with cameras. Mm-hmm. And cameras on the outside, okay. Largely that's capturing other people, not usually me. I mean, of course, I'm coming and going or whatever, right? So there is some concern there.
Yep. But now if you have cameras on the inside, they could also capture you coming and going.
This is true, and that's my concern, because I recently put
different kinds of coming and going.
I put some cameras back inside my house for security reasons, in areas like the garage and the in the basement, mostly because those are like easier to access areas that are furthest out of sight, especially if you're up in the bedroom. Down into the basement is 2 flights of stairs.
Right.
So would you hear someone come in if it's a walkout basement and it's dark out, right? And I try and configure my lights to go on at night, but so I put cameras on the inside. Also, my kids were getting into trouble because that area of the house is so remote. Yep.
They're going down there in their quote playroom and doing things they shouldn't.
Exactly. So it's nice for that, but that's my number one concern with IoT devices is folks hacking into the cameras.
Yep, and more importantly, the internal cameras.
That's an interesting comment, because I do have cameras in the house, and most of them. There's look up again. There's one in my office because this is a critical place I like to have monitored, but the other cameras in my house are on the doors, right? Ingress, egress. And I do run them on a video recording unit that, is basically just
local.
Yeah, it's just local. And I like that just because I think more than anything else, frankly, on the ingress egress is more of a deterrent than anything else.
Yep.
Right? That people see the camera and they're like, oh fuck, better not screw with this.
Yep. So yeah, Joff, we have our cameras outside, however, for the ingress and egress stuff. So we have it on the front porch.
See, I'm lazy, so I did the Nest camera, and it stores it in the cloud, which I hate. But I mean, the convenience factor. Mine's you pop it in and you scan the thing with the app, and I'm done, and all it needs is power, right? Like that's all.
Hell, mine doesn't even need power; they're all battery powered.
See, I get lazy changing the batteries.
Me too, but
my cameras, believe it or not, are actually hardwired back to the video recording device. They are continuous feed that's just rotating day and night.
I don't understand the concern with the toilets being hacked.
Well, I honestly don't give a shit.
Wow. I see what you did there. I really wish I hadn't seen what you did there because I just hacked your cameras and you shouldn't have put the camera in the bathroom, man.
That was a really crappy joke, John.
Oh, man, there it goes. Oh.
Man, no, somebody did a really shitty job of securing that thing.
No kidding, right?
It's important to flush the cache on your smart toilet.
Has anybody looked at the mechanics of a fucking toilet? It is not that complicated, right?
No. I mean,
I don't understand why.
It's certainly not anything that's going to take the piss out of you.
I don't understand the monitoring.
There goes Larry.
The benefits of the toilet. I mean, because some of the seats have the Bluetooth connectivity, and there's an app, but you're on the freaking toilet, like.
But you already are on the toilet and have the phone in your hand.
Exactly. I mean, maybe it could tell me if I need to replace the
the filter.
What is the stuff you drop on the back of the tank to make the water blue and stuff?
Oh yeah, like the 2000 flushes type.
Yeah,
whatever.
I could see it needs to remind me that I do that. Maybe would be one use case, but
or it can say, "Dude, what have you been eating?"
Right. There was, and I don't know if it was real.
Set the temperature on the bidet part.
No, it was fake. But there's someone talked about toilets that could do like a drug test on your urine and analyze your feces and tell you about your diet and stuff.
That is a reason not to have it.
Right.
I don't want anything medical about me. I do not want leaking.
Yeah. What did you eat? I know exactly what I ate. Thank you very much.
I mean, there are just so many things
none of your business.
So many things that don't need connectivity and to be IoT, but they do anyway. And I just what were we talking about? Hair straightener or something like that?
Yeah,
like that had Bluetooth on it. Like again, it goes back like you're holding it in your hand. Like what's? I mean, your stove. I could see the timer, but I don't know.
I have a real, and this enters the area of medical devices that people wearables, right? That people are always going around with. I mean, when you start sending your personal medical data up to the cloud. That is subject to massive abuse, even without a security breach, right? I mean, you're in a situation where there's somebody running a database that knows what your blood pressure is all the time, that knows what your heart rate is, that knows what your respiration rate is. I mean, it's a very short path to connect that with insurance data and then to basically rate you as a risk that's unworthy of insuring. I mean, this is a very slippery slope, and it bothers me greatly.
I agree. I like IoT for controlling lights. I think it's fun.
Yeah.
If someone wants to hack the lights, okay, whatever.
That's the sport. That's what I call it. That's a sport. I mean, that's not a life-threatening situation for the most part, right? You want to hack the lights, hey, have at it,
I mean, it could be. I mean, maybe if all of your lights were 100%.
At a stretch, it could be.
Right.
Especially if you have a disabled person.
Yeah.
You definitely could be in some trouble. But
I do like keeping some lights not connected in any shape, form, or fashion. Just in case, kind of thing. But.
I feel like we should probably wrap up the show.
Oh, before we do that.
We have a couple more stories, Jeff.
Yep.
A couple more stories.
All right, let's do a couple.
Yep. And we have another beer you left. So.
Oh, can we talk about the well, briefly. It's not really that much of a story when you get into it, but there was a great paper that the Schneier posted there.
Oh, yeah.
Using artificial intelligence to detect essentially anomalous behavior in the BGP routing table, which I think is actually an important issue because a lot of our readers, a lot of our listeners over time have heard me and others say that the global routing table with the border gateway protocol is completely 100% dependent on trust. Trust between the tier 1 ISPs, tier 1, 2 ISPs, and so on.
It's literally a peer, right? And a peer, even the word peer implies some level of trust.
Exactly, that your neighbor is sending you information that you can trust and you will accept it on faith. And the truth of the matter is today is that sometimes your neighbors are not so trustworthy. And so there has been and will probably continue to be hijacks of the BGP table. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is there's a number in the internet called an autonomous system number that means a whole lot more than an IPv4 or IPv6 address. An autonomous system number basically indicates a grouping or a block of addresses that belong to a particular entity that are advertised out into the border gateway protocol table across the global internet. And people can actually advertise with the same number and violate the trust and advertise even the same blocks for another entity, same IP address blocks for another entity across the table.
Now, Joff, in BGP, are there ways to detect that? I would imagine there's some protections as the internet largely runs.
You clearly have to use AI.
Well, that's one. There are rudimentary ways that have been developed over time to try to protect that. One of the ways that a lot of tier 1 operators will talk about is the length of the AS path. So if the autonomous system number is more than a certain number of hops away, they may not trust it, right? Because that autonomous system number doesn't belong that far away from a traditional historic perspective.
One way of basically determining that the origin of that AS number is coming from somewhere different that it likely shouldn't be. Because that stuff doesn't usually change that much.
Unless, of course, you're now advertising for ASNs that are the same number of hops away.
Well, right. Yes. It's always, so these are basically mechanisms that are still built essentially on trust. Another one is, prefix length filtering. So there's a principle in IP routing whereby the more specific prefix, otherwise known as the longest prefix, will take precedence over a shorter prefix. So if you take somebody that has a class B, for example, in the IPv4 space, that's known as a /16. If a malicious actor were to advertise 2/17s into the internet routing table using border gateway protocol that overlapped with that /16 of the authentic entity, then the 2/17s would take precedence because they have a longer prefix by definition.
Now, Joff, and that's common across most routing protocols that the more specific route will always take precedence for performance reasons, right?
It is, and it's subject of a historical discussion. Back in the day when IPv4 was not nearly as fragmented and exhausted, the people that ran the big ISPs, the people that were running the small number of tier 1 entities, would not accept routes that were classless. They basically said, if you advertise a /16 to me, I will accept it. If you advertise a /8 to me, I will accept it. If you advertise a /24, I will accept it. But if you had a classless prefix like a /25 or a /17 or something like that, they would not typically accept it historically. But the problem that we ran into is that that concept,
address space exhaustion.
Exactly, that concept broke down because of the need for address space. And people started dividing it up, and there was a great deal of pressure to accept classless advertisement. And so once classless advertisements were accepted, then ISPs faced this decision to actually make a choice as to how specific a prefix they will accept. And you will find a lot of ISPs will not accept a prefix that is any longer than 24. That's fairly common practice from my historical understanding. Now, that may have changed even today because there are much smaller prefixes out there that are advertised in the global route table.
I will say that I loved that last little bit. I learned a ton, and that Joff seamlessly switched from advertisement to advertisement in the same sentence. In the same sentence.
I know.
He took a couple more sips of his gin, and he got more sophisticated.
That's what it is. I actually mentally understood that and made that transition without even mentioning it until Larry did.
Sorry.
Anyway.
Sorry. That's the SANS instructor in you.
Yeah, it is. So it puts us in this real quandary. Now, the interesting thing that is occurring is that if people actually truly adopt V6, it will get better because you can go back to class full boundaries and the trust mechanism will be reinforced again because, if you only
even in IPv6, there's enough classes to go around, essentially.
There's enough classes to go around. I mean, you've got people, ISPs, that are giving away /64s or /48s. It's a ton of address space. We're not going to have an issue. Now, admittedly, they said that back in the 70s, right?
Yeah, you say that now.
But 128 bits is a metric ass shit ton of address space, right? And that's a
technical measurement. Yep.
Yeah. So that's sort of the history of the issue, and the fact that we exhausted the address space really has raised the trust issue up to the next level. Now, there are a lot of mechanisms in place. Longest path prefix can be filtered in routing devices, and I've done this. I've implemented this myself. I will not accept a prefix that is longer than a certain amount, like /24. AS path length can be filtered. Additionally, all peers should, and if they're not, it's disturbing, they should implement peer-to-peer authentication. There are hashes that you can configure between peers so that if the neighbor does not present you the correct hash, you will not establish a correct neighbor relationship with the BGP protocol. That's critically important because you've got to trust your neighbor. Remember, this protocol runs on TCP port 79. Anybody can attempt to peer with another routing device.
Well, and it has to be open like that.
It does. It has to be open, right? So when the trust relationship is abused, it's usually abused by somebody that you thought was a trusted neighbor. And that's the real pickle here, right? It is something, and I'm not going to pick on geopolitical boundaries, even though this does play into the argument. It is something where a neighbor has deliberately passed on an advertisement that they should not have passed on, or are deliberately advertising something that they should not be advertising, right?
Joff, do you think network-based attacks will live on forever? I mean, the more it seems we go on with time and move to cloud and all these abstraction layers, it seems to be less and less imperative, the security and understanding of the architecture. If you're deploying an application, you don't really need to understand the routing protocols and networking behind it. I can just, put my app in a container and drop it anywhere, and that's fine. But all of these things still need to be connected, right?
Well, I think it depends on the scope because, if you think about a small entity, first of all, if you look at the policies of most of the regional registrars around the world, they typically are not going to accept and even grant you an autonomous system number unless you're a multi-homed entity. So what that means is, by default, you have to be a fairly large entity to begin with to actually even have an autonomous system number, and you cannot.
Did that change in the past 15, 20 years?
I don't think so. And you cannot participate in the global routing table, i.e. the BGP external protocol, unless you have an autonomous system number, right?
Because I remember working for not huge organizations, but we had our internet connection. We had our own AS number, and we had our own IP block.
Yeah, so a lot of people try to work around that, right? They'll fake out the information they provide to the regional registrar, whether it's Aaron or somebody else, and say, "Oh yeah, we're multi-homed. We've got links to Time Warner and Comcast or something," and that they'll try to fake it out and get the autonomous system number granted.
Well,
Now,
I guess those places were multi-home. Now that I think about it, so
yeah, they probably were. I mean, when I was working for university, we had to be multi-home to actually get an AS number.
right.
And we ended up being multi-homed, and we ended up being granted an
But
AS
that's just in a university setting, just on the internet, not Internet 2. That's a different ball of wax.
Right.
Well, Internet 2 fundamentally doesn't operate any different way than the Internet does. The Internet 2
it's just separate. You have a different AS number, different PGP routing structure for Internet 2.
Well, it's an agreement to share some different physical infrastructure as well. You got much higher framing rates, and you've got a lot of higher speed optical links, right?
Right.
But fundamentally, and you get some preferential routing as well, right? There's a lot of ISP tricks in the academic world to give preferential routing for Internet 2.
Yep.
What was I going to say? So it's sophisticated, right? So to your point, will people actually care? Well, for smaller targeted entities, the ability to hijack the global route table is relatively limited because they have to be a certain level to play, right? For larger entities, geopolitical entities, then it's going to be an issue, but it's going to be noticed quickly. The downside of that is, if somebody in North Korea or somebody in Iran decides to advertise Google's AS number with Google's block, it's very, very quickly going to be noticed, and it's going to be filtered in very, very short order. So it's going to be a momentary
It limits the scope of the attack, and that's happened before, and it limits the scope of the attack because thankfully talented engineers across the globe are looking at these issues and understand the protocol. My fear is over time, there's less and less of those engineers that actually understand those protocols.
I think now you hit on the point, right? There's some, if you talk about the high-end routing guys who really understands routing information blocks, they understand the BGP protocol up and down, and I'm really only partially that guy because I had some experience in the time, but they're really smart people, right?
Yeah.
And you're right. My fear is you get this generational churn, and then you get the youngest coming up, and they're trained by Cisco and whomever, and they've got certain knowledge. But
like you said, it's the larger organizations that are going to assign the AS number, because I feel like back in the day, you would work with that because you would have an AS number, and you would have to understand routing, whereas today you're getting a much smaller address block, and you're connecting, and it's really just a simple static route, and that's how you get to the internet, so that the knowledge can be transferred or lost and held in a very small number of people.
So you've ever read those fictional books where like technology has been just sort of assumed to exist over time, and there's like some council of elders? I feel like we're sort of headed into that place. Right?
So Asimov's Foundation series.
Yeah.
Any technology just indistinguishable from magic, right?
There's a good deal of that thinking process here, because those that really understand it, we're getting older.
and now we're replacing that collective knowledge with AI.
Yes. So, coming full circle
with technological knowledge, right?
So what Schneier's doing is, well, not Schneier himself, but what he was referencing was an academic paper that's talking about looking at the historical trends in the BGP routing table and how that fluctuates over time, and then assigning feature classification from an artificial intelligence perspective to those various metrics that you can actually measure, and then using the AI model and training it, and then using the AI model to actually signal when the table is not fitting the model, right? Which is, I think, a very, very good approach, because you look at the very large entities on the net that are advertising these big blocks of address space. They should not change much over time, other than the fact that there's going to be some topological shifts with outages of power and this and that. But the actual, geographical sources of these ASs, intent, what's the word I'm looking for the most part, will stay basically the same. Right?
Well, it's all well and good until the AI becomes self-aware and turns into Ultron that wants to destroy the world.
Or
but, you know,
something from Cyberdyne.
That's
I
not
guess
gonna-
that's just in the comics and movies. Maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
You're full of really. There's two forms of AI: neural network, and there's a decision tree based AI, right? Random decision forest. And neural networks are the ones you're talking about that become potentially self-aware. Okay, that's great. More than likely, this model they're talking about, which is probably the vast majority of models that are built, are decision tree based, and those guys are essentially feature classification systems, which are using existing data sets. So they're not really that intelligent. I hate to tell you.
It's just in the movie. And I mean, they do talk about, if you watched the Avengers Age of Ultron, they talk about how they had access to the internet, and Jarvis cuts off the access to the internet. That was cool. Good Hollywood kind of story. I mean,
I haven't talked like this forever. You guys should get me drunk and talk more often.
Right? Well, and the whole time you're talking, I'm thinking that, folks listening that haven't studied routing protocols yet or really dug into them, and I'm by no means an expert, right? But I've had to do some in previous lives
same.
and previous jobs,
Same.
right? And I've had to learn these routing protocols. It's as a thing in computer science that you have to study. I just find it absolutely fascinating. Like, prefixes and priorities and short and paths. It's really cool stuff. And I don't want that stuff to be lost, right?
And study the math behind distance vector versus link state protocols, right?
It's really cool stuff.
Dijkstra's algorithm. I mean, there's some amazing mathematical computer science concepts that have gone into this that make all of this stuff work, and we shouldn't forget it. Just like DNS, right? We shouldn't forget it.
It's another, right? Yep. Exactly. So, to a certain extent, DHCP and a lot of other protocols that under the covers we all still rely on today.
So speaking of which, I'm gonna. This is a perfect opportunity to transition to another story about learning from history. There's lots of historical references to some of the top 10 list of the most influential something or other. Like, if we think
it was a topic of my talk. Security isn't doomed if we learn from the past.
Right.
Because I'm noticing as I get older, like
the past repeats itself.
It comes full circle.
But if we think about the 7 wonders of the modern world, or the 7 wonders of the world, like the pyramids and all of these types of things. But what are the 7 wonders of the world for computing? And
you're just waxing poetic.
Well, so Slate did an article about. They went and asked people what are the tenets? What are these 7 wonders of the world? And in fact, they took all this input and they actually came up with 36.
Wow.
36 of the most influential pieces of computer code. And some of the stuff is just fascinating. Like, there was some of these things that I hadn't heard of, and some of the ones that I hadn't thought of, and some of the ones that I thought were new but weren't really. Mm-hmm. So, like, they didn't specify them in any specific order. They just put them out there. The first one in their list was the binary punch card, which was first invented in 1725.
What?
Yep. For programming looms, for weaving fabric.
I think I remember that from history class. Now that you say that.
First modern code was executed in 1948. Grace Hopper's compiler taking natural language into assembly was 1952. Space War, distributed gaming, 1961. Origins of email, 1965.
No, they should have included this. I've got to put this in. RFC 791, 792, and 793.
Which ones of these
should be in there?
Which one of these?
IP protocol, ICMP, and TCP.
Yeah, I would agree
with that.
So, Police Beat algorithm, 1968. Apollo 11 lunar modules bailout code, 1969.
We talked about that story.
That one I read was amazing. Hello World, 1972 or earlier. The first thing you ever do in programming. Null terminated strings, 1972. Telenet, the first public data network built on packet switching, the backbone of today's internet, 1975.
I used that thing.
Vancouver Stock Exchange rounding error, 1982. Let's see. Theric 25, 1985 to 1987. IRC, 1988. The Morris worm, 1988. The one-line virus, sometime in the 1990s. Fork bomb.
Yep.
That was the one. The HTML hyperlink, 1990. Introduction to the JPEG, 1992. Mosaic, 1993. The tracking pixel, 1993. Robots.txt, 1994. Wiki, 1994. First pop-up ad, mid-90s.
Wiki and pop-up ads. I don't know about
But
that.
but think about how we use those types of things now.
What about like sorting algorithms, like the first bubble sort?
Yep. The code that made a T-shirt illegal.
The code that made a T-shirt.
Yep. So the earliest example of code as actism from 1995 was RSA encryption in Perl on a T-shirt. Google's
awesome.
I remember. Yeah.
Google's PageRank algorithm. GeoCities mouse trails. RSS.
Sure.
99. Lost Mars climate orbiter by a math mistake from imperial to metric units. 99. Code to hook a Hellfire missile to a drone. 2000 to 2001. Roomba's guidance system. 2002.
Interesting.
Proportional fair scheduling for wireless networks. 2003, which makes cell phones possible.
What about the thermal exhaust port flaw? Is that
it's not on here.
No.
Bitcoin 2008, Configure Worm 2008 and 2009, the like button 2009, HTTP strict transport security, Heartbleed, Boeing 737 Max, and that was their last one, was 2017.
Interesting.
I mean, bubble sorts and some of those types of things didn't make it.
There's some fundamental concepts in computer science. I would argue that list is the like button could be superseded by the different sort mechanisms. I was researching Lambda operations, which goes way back into computer programming, and I find those fascinating. And I'll admit, I'm still learning.
It's really a mathematical term, right?
It is. You're right, John. And I largely didn't understand it. And I saw it come up in Python, and I'm like, I gotta. This is really cool stuff. And I started reading the history of it. Right? It is a mathematical operation, right? Very much a sorting related to sorting, right?
Well, not necessarily related to sorting. I mean, from the Python perspective, a lambda is a function, but it's based, as my understanding. From calculus, lambda calculus, right? It's a formal system of mathematical logic for expressing computation based on functional abstraction. So Python borrowed it because Python needed a way to create lambdas to express very short, quick, and easy functions.
Yep.
So they use it, and it's particularly helpful with the sorted and the .sort method of lists.
And that's where I've seen it. And you can see the different levels of programming where, like Stack Overflow, people have suggestions, and then one entry is like one line and it's Lambda. And I'm like, I got to study it for like a half an hour before I understand what it's doing.
Now that said, based on I think that's absolutely brilliant. But based on and I don't know what the qualifications for this article is. If it's an implementation of some mathematical function, maybe didn't quite make the list. But thinking about like Theric 25, Theric 25 was an update to Theric 20. Theric 25 was the chemo machine that would irradiate
those
patients.
ones where you pick the numbers and you win based if you pick the. Oh, that's Keno.
That's Keno. Chemo machines, radiation machines to try to cure cancer.
Chemotherapy. Okay.
Chemotherapy. Yep. But what happened is with the Theric 25, it had been programmed to not. So you could do low doses of radiation or high doses of radiation. And you could click the high dose of radiation, and it would deliver high dose of radiation, which would kill people without the safety interlock. And the safety interlock was this metal shield, so you were only delivering these high doses of radiation to these very specific points on a person. So they could accidentally say high without determining that the safety interlock had been installed.
Interesting.
So that's influential piece of code.
Sure.
And now we learned that we now needed to check for the safety interlock or this other thing present. So
Right.
error trapping routines and so forth. So, okay.
Significant things.
Yep.
I'd say.
Yep. And,
Way more significant than the like button. That's all I'm saying.
But is it? So think about where the like button gets used in today's society.
Yeah, it gets used a lot, but I would make the assertion right now that social media will go down in history as being one of the worst decisions we ever implemented as a society down the road. And down the road, I'll put that pin in about 20 years down the road where people will say it is counter-social, it is really anti-social media.
I would agree.
I think there's decisions and paths that could make that not true, potentially. Although I can see us going down the wrong path.
Very, very easily. I mean, I've watched Black Mirror before.
Yes. And I think all you have to do is watch Black Mirror to know that if we don't make changes where things are going, and then you read the news and you're like, oh, crap. And then you experience things and you're like, oh, crap. Like, it's totally headed to where Black Mirror says that it's going to head, right? And
Yeah. I mean, I haven't necessarily, we talk about that social media stuff, and I haven't necessarily succumbed to the fact that Facebook and others know exactly what I'm doing. And this is where the like button comes in, that is used for tracking of so many things, because you can like things on other websites that then tracks you, the surveillance economy, as the Slate referred to it as. And I get that.
See, but I look at it.
So I want to finish this thought real quick. In that, I never really fell victim to the thought of Facebook is listening to me and all this type of stuff until the other day, where I walked into the karate studio and we had taken Orion to her karate class. Kristen and I did. And we walked in and Orion was doing her class. I had literally walked in the door. I stood in the entryway next to this woman who was sitting on the bench. And I opened Facebook because I didn't have anything to particularly do. Oh, I'll check into Facebook and post friends you might know. And I looked down, and the woman who was first on my friends who you might know that I'm not friends with is literally sitting on the bench next to me.
Did you friend her?
No. No, because she's not my friend.
See, but I think it's more scary, the power, influence, and control that large technology companies such as Facebook are exerting. I agree there are privacy things that are very creepy and privacy things that could potentially impact your life, right? But I
Mike,
think it's...
what was that? Oh, yeah, never mind.
Yeah, that's my watch.
You know what that is?
No. But I think it's very scary to think about how much influence, power, and control large technology companies, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Google, Microsoft, perhaps, can exert on us. And that's more than just a privacy thing. I agree privacy is an issue, but how they shape and control and could prevent you from doing certain things and guide society is more of an issue for me than privacy.
That's where I'm coming down. Privacy is one thing, but how society is changing itself and molding around the technology, and how people are not communicating anymore except through these platforms, represents a significant societal and psychological broad spectrum issue that we've got to address.
Yep. And you think about that so many people are more willing to speak their mind on social media because there's no fear of repercussion, as opposed to me calling you an asshole.
Right.
Me going on Twitter and calling you an asshole is whatever. But me sitting down and calling you an asshole to your face, that's a completely different thing, because there's some fear involved in that, because you might really not like that. You might punch me, and you know more.
And it translates. It translates and has and will continue to translate into the physical world as kinetic actions, and that's a degradation in society that. But
also more so controlling the information in what you say. They control, the large technology companies, what you put online. Right? I mean, sure, you could put anything online if you stand up your own stuff. But if you want people to see it, you got to put it on a a property owned by Google or Facebook or Twitter. And
well,
so,
you got to qualify. You got to qualify that the accessibility of standing up your own stuff is not broad spectrum, right? It's available to a few of us
right,
that have
the
technology.
technical ability, right?
But you go to your nearest friend who's not a geek nerd techie person. The only channel they know is to go through Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc.
Right, and those outlets change. Like think about MySpace was the thing, and then it started to become Twitter a little bit, and then Facebook, and
yeah,
now,
but they end up with category kings.
Yep.
And so here, if you want to post a video, you're going to post it on YouTube. And YouTube has come out and made arbitrary, because they control the platform.
Yep.
You can't have a gun channel. And you know what? We don't like what you're saying. There's another podcaster, I forget his name. And therefore, we're going to pull you from all of the platforms. And that's my concern, is they're shaping society,
right?
Which is very scary.
A commercial entity is shaping how we consume and what we consume. So
the other concern I have that's significant is generational. I watch my kids, and it's like they're forgetting how to talk to each other. Like literally, get away from the screen and have a conversation with somebody face to face. I mean, that sounds absurd to us saying it, but literally there are people growing up that have forgotten how to communicate with each other. I mean, that to me is a frightening aspect as well.
Yep.
Right,
let's just hope they don't say you can't talk about hacking anymore.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, because then we're not having any fun anymore.
Hey,
right?
So what's Fortnite?
What is Fortnite? Yeah. Is that a
society?
You didn't see that thing?
No.
So Lady Gaga posted to Twitter the other day because there was in the news that Fortnite was down.
Yeah.
And it was down for like 3 or 4 days. And Lady Gaga was like, "What's Fortnite?"
Oh boy.
And Ninja tweeted to her and it's like, "Oh, well, we should call me on the telephone. I'll totally tell you what Fortnite's about. We should totally play together." You know what Lady Gaga said? "Who are you?"
That's really funny.
Like, oh, so many memes right there.
so many memes. So little time. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching this edition of Paul Security Weekly. Next is our pre-recorded interview. That concludes the live portion. Joff, thank you very much. Larry, thank you. And take us out.
Aside from our pre-recorded interview, over and who are you?